welcome back. Suffolk, Reelmow, 19 inch, 98cc cast iron. So today we're going to hopefully reassemble it. So what have I been doing since last week? Well, we stripped it, as I said. I've had the white parts sandblasted and I've painted them white with rattle cans. Not a professional finish, but probably doesn't need to be. So what I'm hoping, the white bits are not going to show up the original green bits too much. So I'm hoping it'll all fit quite nicely and look the part. So the engine, you've probably noticed, I've done a little bit of touching up with that as well. Found some green paint, not a perfect match by a long way, but I think it's probably good enough for me. So without further ado, let's get on. We'll put the engine platform on. We're just going to go through the clutch and refit the engine, and then we've got a few more things to do. So let's get going. So let's have a look. We will start with the engine platform. So we've just got to think about this. I think that's the way it went. So let's do that. We'll put some glasses on. Good. Right. I did notice there was a few little cracks in the engine platform, and I've welded them from underneath, even though it looks like they are still cracked. So I'll get those on. I did off camera, I did actually clean a lot of the threads up just to make things a bit easier. Hopefully they will all go in nice and easily. Right, now last week I spoke to you about the centrifugal clutch, and they do seize up. I did take this one apart, but you really do need to put it in the vise. It's quite difficult. Sometimes it looks like they're okay, but they do seize up. So I did take it apart. So what I'll do, we'll take it apart again, and just put it back together. So what we're going to do firstly is we're just going to release, just take a bit of the tension off the springs. Inside. Probably worth noting before you touch this just where they are, because the chances are where they were, the screws were probably the right position. But you obviously can adjust them. So you can see the shaft is actually clean, because as I said, I did clean it up. So what we're going to do is put a little bit of copper slip on that. And then the tricky part, which is trying to get the spring without losing it, getting it back in its place. Don't mind using the split pin for a second time. Don't think that's going anywhere. Right, now, normally what I like to do is I do like to clean up the shoes a little bit, probably with the sandpaper, but I think what you've got to remember, a lot of these old type things, these are probably asbestos. So I think in this case, rather than causing a bit of dust, I'm just going to wipe it over with a little bit of thinners. And I think that will probably do rather than making a dust. So I'll just get that over. Right, and I think we just tighten those little screws down a bit. Just increase the spring pressure. Just below. That's good. Isn't it? So ready to go. So I'm going to place the engine here. That's it. So we've got our keyway there, and we've obviously got our keyway slot. So all being well, it will go on, and we won't lose the key. A little bit of a tap. I think at this point we need to leave the pinch bolt loose, because once we've got it on the engine platform we can adjust the clutch in or out so it's in its ideal position. As I said the other week, we've got a oil light bush in there which doesn't really need any lubricating itself, self-lubricating, but it's got a little tiny little nib of grease. The drum's all quite good in there. So let's see if we can get it on. So, I did in the week. I did give the engine a service. I felt it was only a good opportunity to do it. So I took the flywheel off, cleaned and set the points, gave it a bit of a clean up, as you can see. I've taken the carburetor off. That's had a clean in the ultrasonic cleaning tank, and I've treated it to a new Japanese spark plug. What I have done with these in the past is, if it looks like it's out of a line and it's not quite right, on running them I've just sort of loosened all four bolts a little bit, and then they will sort of line themselves up. But it's looking pretty good, And then we're just going to push the clutch in, centrifugal clutch, and then nip that pinch bolt up. Right, so let's see if we can get that clutch in a little bit. pretty good. Very easy to forget this little pinch this up, and the trouble is, like a lot of these things, if you do forget, it will do a lot of damage. Some of these clutches, they do have two pinch bolts. Obviously, they both need doing up, but on these earlier ones, it's just the one. It's quite a good size pinch bolt, so I don't think it's going anywhere. So we've got that looking good. Handlebars on. I think one of the nice things with these handlebars, they've got a very, very good range of adjustment on there, because they will cut quite low, they will cut quite high. Obviously, when you adjust your rear roll of your height of cut, it does also affect your handle height, so it's nice to see that there is good adjustment on there, plenty of it. Good. So, let's find a throttle if we can. One throttle lever. I can't remember which side it was on. Let's put it on the right hand side. So, is my throttle cable going to reach? The Suffolk Colts and the Punches, they have a shorter throttle cable, so these, as this actually is, it's a corporation export, they do have a longer cable. So sure whether this is actually a Suffolk Colt or Punch cable, because it's looking a little bit on the short side. It's good to have a little bit of slack because of your handlebar, so I'm going to probably put it out. I don't think that's the right cable, but we've got to go with it just for now, I think. I think it was actually on the left hand side, but anyway, that's something else. So, right, so what I was quite pleased about, I'd actually say thrilled. Now, these, we've spoken about these before, until you come in a bit. Those are the drive pinions. Now, as I said before, they do wear, and these nice square edges become rounded, and then you end up losing or intermittent drive. They're getting quite difficult to get hold of, so I was over the moon to find them in good order. So those are going to go back on. So I think we'll start with the right hand side. We're going to just take our click off the wheel. So we've got our little pull. make sure that that's obviously the way it does go. You can see like that. Just try it first just to see if I have got the right one on the right side. I've got a feeling they are actually numbered, part numbered, which will tell you. So let's have a look. Or some of them I've seen have got a number. That one hasn't. I think that's it. So let's have a look. So they should, when you push them, they should freewheel. When you pull them back, engage. So let's have a look. Yeah. So that looks good. That looks good. So I think all I'm going to do is just put a little bit of grease on the shaft, and then I can oil through the oil hole in a little bit. There we go. Right, so there's that. Clip. That's it. So let's go over to the chain side. There we go. Now, what I would say, and I said before with these Suffolks, they're almost a pleasure. Well, they are a pleasure to work on. And there's not too much that causes problems, but there's one item that does cause a few problems, and that's the cutting cylinder drive sprocket. Now we will take this off. Again, that will be easier said than done. Not taking it off, but that one's coming off. So is that one just? So that sprocket there, it's screwed onto the shaft, and it's left-handed thread. So obviously as it's running, it's tightening itself up. They tend to be very, very tight, those sprockets. Not easy to get off. And in the Suffolk manual, it does tell you, use a drift, jam the cutting cylinder and drift it off. If it won't come off, then you use heat. I don't particularly like the idea of that, and for Owen I did say that I'd made a tool up to save butchering the sprocket, and I'll go and get the tool and I'll show you. Quite a simple thing, quite effective. So here we are. So that's what I've made. It consists obviously of a nice thick bit of metal, and this is a 1/2 inch drive deep socket, and you can probably see what I've done. It's quite easy. It's just that and 2 pins welded on. What I did do to get it, I just laid a bit of paper across there. I did myself a template so I knew where I was with the holes. Then I was able to drill the holes. This, incidentally, this bit of round metal, doesn't have to be round. I use that, and I've used them on a few times. If you're lucky enough to have any old scrap Ransom Marquis's auto certies, this particular plate, which is on the back of the clutch, makes brilliant pullers and tools. So over the years, I've had a few come through. So I just use a bit of that. And the pins, I don't think it was terribly hard metal I used, but I think the only thing I would say is just make sure that your deep socket is a snug fit on the shaft. That's probably quite important. And as you can see, that's quite a snug fit. Not much rocking on there. You need to chock the cylinder, and probably suggest you do it quite close to the weld. You're less likely to bend it. But that's what I use. As I say, it seems to work quite well, and seeing I've been taking a few apart, it just saves butchering that sprocket. So that's the clutch tool. Right, so at this point we're just going to have a quick look at the chain. Pretty good. So let's put some grease on it. So we'll put the cast cover back on. Make sure our pawl is in the right position. I think I did the first time round, but I should have really put a little bit of grease on there, a little bit of lubrication. Good. And of course the axle. Wheel. Good. This one had a washer on there. Let's put that back. Rather battered wheel covers, wheel trims. White and greasy hands don't go, do they? Anyway, let's get the other one. So you've got that there. And last but not least, I was lucky enough to find, let's have a little sip of tea to keep me going, 2 good second-hand rollers. As you can see, got some worn-out rollers in desperate need of replacing. So, through. The other side of the shaft has a split pin, so it's definitely easier to do it this way. I think what I'm going to do is just give it a quick clean up. I'm going to put these good second hand. Just going to tip it up a little bit. Good. as you can see, this is obviously a late machine with these plastic rollers, and I know there's friends out there in the old lawnmower club that will be scoffing at these plastic rollers. But originality is key. Plastic or no plastic, we need to keep the right things on the machine. We do that. Bracket on. You probably noticed the brackets. Not sure whether I've had that on there, but those are for the grass box or grass bag as it is. Put that in there. And again, I'm going to try and put it in the same position. I think about where the other one is. It's looking pretty good. We mustn't get our washer there. Good. So, there you have it. Suffolk Reelmow, 19-inch, slightly unusual colours, but I think it's right. Let me know what you think. Is it too white? Do I need to age it a little bit? But anyway, I think it looks a lot better than what it did. And I will give it a fire up at some point, test it, make sure it cuts the grass. So I think on that, we're going to call it a day for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, something a little bit different. Suffolk Corporation, another one. All I'm going to say is double dipstick. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next week. Thanks for watching.